that was a monumental moment when I got the call from Shaka just about the album, period. Apparently she had been playing it in her car for months and finally had her people to reach out in that classic story that you hear sometimes. Oh, yeah, I got home and my roommate said, somebody said they were Shaka Khan, they called.
Welcome to Run That Record, where we talk to artists about some of our favorite albums, song by song.
Yo, you gotta get it. What are you really getting?
The year was 1994. What happened in 94? Tupac got shot 5 times, survived, went crazy. What else happened in 94? Tonya Harding lost her mind and started busting people across the legs to get a leg up on the competition. 94. The poor, heartbreakingest, best/worst football team in history, the Buffalo Bills, went to the Super Bowl for the 4th consecutive time, only to lose it for the 4th consecutive time. In music, in black music specifically, in 1994, a young woman from Jackson, Mississippi found herself in the enviable position of having created what some would call the benchmark record for jazz soul fusion. I'm talking about Jhelisa Anderson and her classic UK soul, acid jazz, right before neo soul, classic Galactica Rush. Internationally acclaimed artist Jhelisa Anderson is for real from one of those incredible musical families and lineages. Her father was a big-time gospel radio host and a prodigy pianist and organist from an early age. The Anderson family was a singing family with Jhelisa's father on the keys. Her cousin is an equally acclaimed artist and singer, Carleen Anderson, whose mother, Vicki Anderson, married Bobby Bird of James Brown and the Fabulous JBs. She began her solo recording career in 1990 in London with the UK band Soul Family Sensation, releasing the album New Wave on One Little Indian Records. With label mates The Shaman, Jhelisa then recorded 2 top 10 hits singles, Love, Sex, Intelligence and Forever People, earning Jhelisa a platinum album with The Shaman. She also guested on Bjork's debut album. In 1994, after developing into an accomplished solo artist, singing, writing, and producing under her first name, Jhelisa, she released her first album, Galactica Rush, on Dorado Records. This stunning debut, a 9-track masterpiece of jazz, funk, soul, and whatever ingredients she grabbed from the ether, stands the test of time and still today is one badass piece of work. We're talking 1994, a year before D'Angelo's Brown Sugar, 3 years before Erykah Badu's Baduism, and while the term had yet to be uttered, Galactica Rush is neo-soul gold. So much so that we decided that we wanted to speak with Jhelisa and ask her to kindly run that record. We'll pick up on the conversation in the middle of things because I didn't know that we were recording yet.
It's a great feeling, and it's just always revived by someone who just comes out of the woodwork and says, this record right here is still with me.
But for me, this is the kind of record that will do that and continue to do that, though. Because if you just hear it, even if the era of the production is not what you're used to, you hear like the arrangements, the vocal arrangements, and what you're saying, even the titles. I mean, we're not even recording yet, but Baby God, like, dude, you about to tell me something.
Actually started recording because I didn't want to miss nothing.
Okay.
I heard morsels coming, so I don't want to miss anything.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Morsels.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah. I've been listening to it like on repeat the last few days, and I'm like, this is my friend. Really? I'm friend with this bad individual who makes stuff like this. So,
It's almost like another person, to be honest, I know, after you make a record and then 10 or 20, 30 years go by, that was the person you were then. Well, you still have glimpses of that person. There's a certain detachment from it. Like, that is a person. It's a separate person.
Yeah.
Especially with social media, bringing it back to you, the fans bringing it back to you to remind you that was their experience. They want to remember. They've conjured the image of what it is for them. So it changes with every individual. Like, you focused on the vocals, Tondrae.
Me too.
Somebody else might focus on the beats. For me personally, it was my first opportunity to do exactly what I wanted to do. That freedom. So I'm like, okay, how do we, so the Galactica Rush with Greg Osby coming in, that was big for me because I consider Greg like...
So is this like your first big budget record?
Big budget? No, we from the underground, man.
When you say you get to do exactly what you want to do, it leads me to believe that you were given a certain amount of tools.
Yeah, in terms of creatively, I could do what I want to do, but we were still from the independent scene, from the underground scene, starting off these tracks in the bedroom, starting out these tracks with, Pro Tools, Inbox 2, or,
Right.
And then
it doesn't sound like it.
Then we took it into a bigger studio once we got...
Right. And I remember your workflow.
And then overdubbed some of the live instrumentations. That's how we got the combination of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Live strings on Bête Noire, the bass, and overdubs of some drums and stuff and percussion.
Right.
That combination made it doable for a small label.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So no, it was not relevant to budgets for major label artists at all. This is why, it was such a phenomenon, because no one was expecting
the response
from it. So Greg Osby, once again, for me, was one of the highlights because he was so, for me, on another level.
Well, what were the restraints that you felt before this record?
Well, before this record, I was just visiting different... I was on One Little Indian, and my label mates were Bjork and the Shaman.
That's crazy.
So as label mates, the Shaman was like, "Oh, you want to jump on this track?"
Wow.
I didn't know that track would, get me a BPI platinum record, top 5, 2 top 5 singles, because that was just a day out of my life.
Which track was that?
Forever People. Forever People with the Shaman and LSI. Love, Sex, Intelligence. And
yes.
Yeah, that was all within the One Little Indian, label group.
Okay.
And so that's what I was doing before then. So I went from this kind of pop electronica, fun music with the message, talking about the Gaia Mind. I think they had Terrence McKenna on the album talking about hallucinogenics, talking about altered states. And this was all wrapped up within kind of a pop music package. So it was quite, wow. But we were young and having fun. And I didn't think anything of it. Next thing you know, I'm on tour and we're performing in front of thousands of raving young people. So I was, thrust into the club culture world, which was fun. Nice. I was just there for it. It was just, for me, it's like visiting new planets, but just visiting. So I'm traveling, right?
Come on. Love, sex, intelligence. Love, sex, intelligence.
All of that backdrop, all of those things that we fight, combat, we do artistically often. And in the art, a lot of times we try to heal each other. We try to heal ourselves. We try to speak to the issues, make the points. And that's what Jhelisa does. Now, what I love about a lot of how she does it is it's not over you, like hitting you straight across the head all the time. Like you jamming for 45 minutes before you realize, oh, I'm in a rainbow somewhere. I'm like on a star. It's not like just at the club, but
Here's what I want to talk about because Jhelisa, I probably am the least familiar with your work of the three of us, and so getting into this album, this 1995 release, right? And I'm taken back to mid 90s, soul,
94.
And kind of the mood of that era, right? And listening to Galactica Rush, I'm feeling Love Jones, and I'm feeling, Cyphers, and I'm taken back to that era of just Black cool, right? Like 90s Black cool, where these soul, soul is resurgent, right? But also you've got these deep grooves. You've got, this jazz undercurrent. So just there's a vibe here. And I just don't know if you can talk a little bit about that, in which you remember the space you were in kind of putting together this album.
Well, first of all, we're coming from the underground, independent culture, which I took to mean total freedom, juxtaposed with major label culture, which is not total freedom, but kind of like a false freedom. Yeah. So I took every opportunity when this came up. I says, say what I want. I can create sonic, harmonic landscapes. Don't have to be poppy. No one's telling me, it's too complex there. No one's going to listen. No one's telling me where my limits are. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That was the landscape that I started to throw paint. Mm-hmm. But of course, the core of me always had the spirit of rebellion and taking the opportunity to say things in lyrics that generally were not allowed on mainstream. Mm-hmm. Taking the inspiration from Nina Simone, mm-hmm. where she said a lot of unpopular things. Mississippi Goddamn. Mm-hmm. And the jazz stations of the time did not want to play those things. Yeah. They wanted to play My Baby Just Cares for Me. And all mm-hmm. those themes that predominantly Black female artists were allowed to talk about with no problem. If mm-hmm. they wanted to keep working, stay off the politics.
Mm. So what do you think of the label Neo Soul? Because I'm going back to 95, the kind of, D'Angelo is dropping in the same year, right?
This came out in 94.
94, okay.
Before Brown Sugar.
Excuse me. Yeah. So in that period, I don't think we quite have the language of neo, the moniker of neo soul, right? And I don't know if you would even characterize this work in that, but certainly there is, again, there's a vibe here that I think is reflective of a mood of the mid 90s. In making that shift to neo soul, the down tempo, the deep grooves, the kind of jazz influences,
acid jazz,
acid jazz, the soul phrasings and everything, kind of merging all that together from a Gen X sensibility. What do you think about that label, and does that resonate at all with how you see this work in particular?
When you're on the auction block, they got to call you something, right? It works for marketing, but I don't relate to the various titles, but I use them because that's what's been created for the public to kind of define. If you say new soul or acid jazz means that we're not mainstream, and the new soul has more broad opportunities that are taken. Whereas the old soul, once again, if you wanted to get on the radio, you're not going to be talking about too many political issues. I think the Temptations got, a couple of very socially conscious songs, but generally speaking, socially conscious songs do not make top 10 radio. So whether you call it neo soul, which I think I'm put under the acid jazz, experimental soul, alternative soul.
Yep.
UK soul.
Yeah, UK soul.
Whatever they like to have that as another moniker.
Yeah, and I mean, look, in the 90s, this is where my ears were, right? I mean, this is, I when I got to Atlanta in 1998, I was at Yin Yang Cafe. I was, just Atlanta at that time, Funk Jazz Cafe, all of those movements were kind of curated.
Jhelisa's in Atlanta now, by the way.
Yeah. So all of those movements were curating this kind of acid jazz, deep groove, soul jazz type of work, right? Which is, I don't know if I don't feel as if that genre is as present now as it was, at that particular moment when I'm listening to Jazzy Fast Nassies and Omar and Incognito and all that stuff on the radio.
Now, no, it doesn't exist in the same way. I mean, obviously, there's still music being made by typically folks our age. Maybe some youngsters still too, but
still there. Tuning into Worldwide FM, Giles Peterson, they're keeping it alive, and it's still a portal for experimentation. It's still a portal for freedom. That's what you expect to hear.
Yeah,
when you go to those spaces to experience the music. But Funk Jazz Cafe was revolutionary to me. When I came to Atlanta and went to a Funk Jazz Cafe event, you had this combination of art, intellectualism, and just funkiness.
Yeah.
It's like 4 stories of random Black artistry of any type. Somebody over there hula hooping, somebody over here doing poetry, this dude beatboxing, there's anything you can think of.
it's straight boheme. It's straight kind of 90s black, boheme culture, right? That is artists and intellectuals and everybody kind of coming together in this space. But sonically, the this kind of deep groove, acid jazz, soul jazz, however you want to call it, right? Neo soul, kind of subgenre of black music, is kind of pulsating through that space, right? And I don't know if you have any thoughts, kind of as an artist, who was present in that moment, the connection between the kind of Gen X, culture, bohemian culture that we saw in Atlanta and you saw other places, and this music, right, and this sound and this kind of sonic landscape.
Hip hop beats,
Mm-hmm.
underground hip hop,
Mm-hmm.
and soul had a place to go to expand.
Yeah.
We're not going to expand on Main Street.
Yep.
So to break out of that, you take these vehicles. I don't do hip hop beats myself, but I partnered those bedroom producers who make dope beats. Love a dope beat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I got a jazz chord for you.
Yeah.
So that we brought, forward combination of jazz and the hip hop and the socially conscious lyrical content created a new portal that we had not.
Neo soul, yes, I think that, and we talked about this in another episode where we talked about the New Jack Swing and then Neo Soul coming after New Jack Swing. But one of the acts that we felt was highly inspirational to Neo Soul was Tribe Called Quest.
Well, I was just gonna say, right, like what Jhelisa just laid out, right, is a direct lineage to, Tribe, De La, that whole native tongues type of movement, right? That is deep into jazz, right? Appreciative of soul, but obviously coming at it from a hip hop, cultural sensibility, and just producing, this timeless, music that I think is feeding, right, what is happening by the time you get to mid 90s with releases like Galactica Rush.
So let's get on to Galactica Rush, like specifically. Well, you recorded this where exactly?
London.
In London. The whole record?
Whole record.
Awesome. So you said between bedroom producers and M boxes and setups, and then here and there, you guys went in and actually
we
had some studio time.
In a little room, and we sketch it out, get the vibe, just in a classic bedroom production style.
Nice.
There's less pressure, because when you go in a huge studio, you like watching your clock. We only got 3 hours. We got to get all this done.
Yeah.
Be able to lay the canvas, sketch it out, and then start to invite musicians onto it, and then start to expand the production from there.
So had you written any of this before you kind of got into those bedroom spaces, or did you kind of did the writing?
Yes, it's a combination of throwing paint, which means, oh, that's a dope beat. You hear the beat?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Lyric comes. You hear the beat, melody comes.
Okay.
Very organic process.
Yeah.
Not a premeditated, I gotta get a top 10 hit. I've worked on this and this is gonna be it. No.
Yeah.
Very
Nice.
jazz approach. And then There are some compositional ideas that I bring. So I was once again just jumping off creative cliffs, hoping I land. Okay. And that kind of freedom, that kind of experimentation generally isn't allowed. You have to be fully formed. When you got investors,
Mm-hmm.
fully formed. They don't have development.
So how did that happen? So you just started working with some cats, and then y'all had some cool tracks down, and then you let some people hear it, and then they said, okay, we could put a little money on that, or I just started with blind faith into making tracks.
I was coming from the top 10 record, top 5 record with the Shaman.
The Shaman. Oh, that's right. Okay.
This was an unlikely move for me. This was not seen as a great business move for me, because I went from a top 5 pop record to a very small independent label doing like 12 inches and that.
Oh, wow.
I think the label, he was probably thinking differently. Like, she just had a top 5 record, let me see what's popping. And so when he mentioned it, it was just really about the beats. I thought, yeah, because I'm traveling, right? So it's another genre. I'm just traveling. I'm just experimenting. I'm young. And, why not? There was no big strategized plan for me over the world, with music. I was still playing. I'm
curious. I know, like, we've heard about your influences from far ago, Nina Simone and jazz influences, but I'm curious. Your record sounds very current to the times that it came out in. So I'm curious to what were you jamming during those times?
Oh, Prince, That came after all of my core influences, which was, of course, Earth, Wind, and Fire, Stevie Wonder, Donny Hathaway, as a core of what I gravitated towards as a youth, and Chaka Khan, and there was like 10 of them that I just devoured their frequency, their whole output as a youth in the 70s. And then Prince comes along in the 80s.
Yep.
Kind of show us that we can do that too. Right? So it's definitely a Prince Shaka influence with a 70s undertone of bass lines. As you know, I come to you with the bass line, bass heavy. It's the bass line. Can you work with that? But I usually sketch out the tunes and bring it to my co-producer. So I'll sketch out the chords, the bass line, and the basic beat from my little sequencer. And that's my way of communicating, because I don't read or write music. And that's how this record got made.
Which was your first song that you had on this? Do you remember?
Oh, God, now that's a good question.
We'll kick this project off.
I think it may have been Nothing's Wrong with Me, which is the slight Prince influence.
Yeah, love that.
Don't try to make me feel I don't belong. Still there's nothing wrong. I know you'd like to think there's something wrong. Still there's nothing wrong. And I'd like to tell you something's wrong.
The World Keeps Turning. That got a bit jazzier.
This is all that there was and all that ever will be. World keeps turning. All that there was and all that ever will be. 'Cause this is all that there was and all that ever will be. World keeps turning. All that there was and all that ever will be.
And then Greg Osby comes into the picture and just turns everything out. For me, personally and creatively, he brought into the project that kind of modal jazz. I was not familiar with those structures. Like, what? And his input was vital to just kind of add that originality to it, where you couldn't really find anything exactly like it. that was something new. So that my two favorite tracks on the album is Galactica Rush featuring Greg Osby, Calvin Jones on bass.
Velocity 26,000.
Extremely low, extremely high.
And Secret Place is the very last track, with Hossam Ramzi, Egyptian percussionist, and just loads of my vocals doing this huge long form vocal arrangement. Which ends the album. So I was like, people are gonna be maybe a little stretched, because some of my friends, they just love Friendly Pressure and World Keeps Turning, the safer tunes.
Yeah.
Quite frightened of Galactica Rush.
I love Galactica Rush. I think it might be my favorite one on here too. But I also really love Hold My Peace. It just spiritually does something for me.
I won't back down. No. Whatever it is, you won't let me hold my peace. I won't give up. No. Whatever it is, you won't let me hold my peace. I won't accept it, babe.
And I was going to ask you, how did you come up with Death of a Soul Diva? Because I just feel like you needed to talk about
that is
the lyrics of it for the people.
Yeah. Always trying to bring that in of the suffering in a way. And it's for the Whitney Houston death at the time, Phyllis Hyman passed. And we had been witnessing a lot of our female artists, legendary artists, go through a lot. And I just wanted to attempt with my writing partner, Pete Smith out of the UK, to create a storyline that, set up the scenario of how the endurance of this woman. And sometimes it doesn't end well, but still recognizing the endurance and the strength and the trials. Death of a Soul Diva is what attracted Chaka Khan to want to record that track. She could relate to that track. That was a monumental moment when I got the call from Chaka just about the album period. Apparently she had been playing it in her car for months and finally had her people to reach out in that classic story that you hear sometimes. Oh yeah, I got home and my roommate said, somebody said they were Chaka Khan, they called. So I was like, I'll be joking, and followed up on it, and it was her. And she wanted to work with me, and I think I represented a certain freedom that she wanted to, work with again. So Death of a Soul Diva, now 30 years later, we've had, once again, a lot of female artists pass away either through suicide or drugs or murder or just, hardships. So it represents, it represents.
Death of a soul diva. 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 Soul diva. Soul diva. Death of a soul diva. Death of a soul diva.
It's heavy, but there's a release to it though. It's like you feel heavy, but then you feel like something comes off of you. It doesn't just hit you and stays on you and make you depressed. I don't know. It exercises the
because that's what ritual is supposed to be about. So as we've used music historically in ceremonies and rituals to revive our from, our hardships and our challenges, and to use what's happened to us in a ritual sense to turn that energy around, to recognize what's happened, but like you said, in the end, to try to revive the spirit, not depress the spirit or kill the spirit. And so I did an acoustic version.
Definitely some alchemy in that. Like I said, it produced a call from Shaka. Yeah. That's crazy. That's like me getting a call from Barry White. Say, brother, you a bad motherfucker. I want to fuck with you.
No, apparently it was doing rounds, even around Prince. A few of his dancers, it got back to me, comments on the record. And just at that time, these things would come to me. I was in the UK, so it took on another life in the US because it was coming through underground portals and college radio.
Wow.
That's crazy.
And so I would all kind of think where this record was traveling. And I just, didn't know what to do with that. That was just so beyond me because we're used to celebrity status. If you've achieved celebrity status, then you on BET, MTV, blah, 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 blah. This was an underground thing that was traveling and taking hold. And I don't think we've seen a scene like that since the early jazz days. That this scene did something for us. And it traveled throughout the planet, from Brazil to Kenya to Australia. I got fans in Berlin, and it's still, I'm fascinated how music travels. And if it becomes a part of your music library, then you in. That's like the highest compliment. If I'm in your house, in your library, that's the highest compliment. You know? I stay there, but people be saying they steal the albums. I say, I gotta buy your album again. Somebody stole it out of my house.
I mean, it's almost like a badge of honor to find something that wasn't released in any major way. That's hot. Like that was.
That's made me a wildcat, because starting out like that and getting the support, then the second album, I said, I'm gonna take it even further then. And then the third album, then folks from the underground started getting mad at me because they wanted another Friendly Pressure. I thought I'm not supposed to repeat myself. I thought we not major. I thought we underground, we independent.
You're supposed to do what we want to.
Yeah, but no, they didn't like the shift to Language Electric. But I gained new fans for Language Electric. It's a bit darker. I've always been dark since I was 9. All the chords were always dark, always the black keys. This is a sad child that could channel her sadness through the design, this harmonic design, which is like everything.
So how did you even start playing instruments without training?
Oh, you know how that goes. You know how we do.
I know that's how I started, but then at a certain point, it was like, all right, we're going to send you to class.
My dad is a prodigy from 12.
Okay. So his stuff was around you.
And he never forced it. And in fact, he's not been in support. He's not really involved. I think it's just like a foreign thing to him. If you're not in church or if you're not on BET,
what are you doing? That's the only way that generation can define a musician.
So really, I could go to the piano on my own, and I just started putting notes together I could hear. Of course, I was singing since 5 with the family, you know, so the 3-part harmony, I wish someone would do just a podcast just on that innateness of how you know where the 3rd harmony is and where the 2nd harmony is innately.
Wow, yeah.
You just slot in.
Also, you program as well. Like, I've seen your skills on the Korg OV1. So at some point, you had to really hunker down on the sequencing aspect too, right?
Well, the Korg was so great to work with, so easy technology. It was an easy tech. I could roll out of bed and have 16 tracks, and the technology did not get in my way. Got to Pro Tools and Logic, I was like, I am inside a German mind. This is not user-friendly for me. I had to really, you know, try to work.
And lift others.
Yeah. So, you know, I come from the culture of 4 tracks, sequencer, drum machine in the early 80s. Always, you know, having a Roland Juno 106.
That plug in right now, I use it daily.
Yes, I love that. And so that gave me, that was my landscape. You know, I couldn't write music, but that's how I, you know, wrote it. And I continue to work that way.
So what are you working on right now?
Oh my God, I've just continue to go further and further out into my imagination. I just feel like that is what I'm to do. And that's what I'm really excited about. The unknown, not the known. And if a chord sounds too Stevie, I can't do that chord. I can't just do the jazz funk chord that you just heard so many times, and please just leave Roy Ayers alone.
Let Roy be Roy.
Let Roy be Roy.
You do you.
I'm standing now. Oxygen is 11 minutes and a half.
Wow, nice.
Running time.
No limit.
Yeah. So I've just gone out there, even though, you know, people are saying, you know, they're not listening to tracks that long anymore. Still, it's that same thing, you know, you're up against. But I'm still excited about music. I've kind of ventured off into what frequency matters and what frequency can do. What harmonic design can do to the biosystem, being a conscious listener of what you're taking in. And even, you know, these studies that have put a cancer cell in a certain environment of frequencies that the cancer cell cannot survive under a certain frequency calculation and measurement.
Wow.
By that, obviously, which leads to the whole meditation and yoga vibes. But, you know, without the religious connotation, for me, it's just harmonic design, frequency, vibration, calculations and measurements, specific tones, what they do and how to use them. So I'm thrilled about music. And, you know, I've made this meditation record, 7 keys, with no lyrics, just some harmonic designs based on the 7 main keys from C, D, E, F, G, A, B as a mainstay. And using the vocal tone. So it's not like these YouTube clips you see here of the synthesizer giving you some new agey type tones. I'm using the vocal to layer a wall of sound to try to deliver, I think, what's riding on that wave through my DNA. Then I started to imagine Aretha Franklin's tone and perhaps the millions of years of information in her tone and a delivery system that she has delivered in her career and placed in our hearts, in our field. And we go to that frequency when we need a boost. Started to change the way I look at music output. Less glamour, less industry, as they want you to look at the Grammys and look at the glamour part. But I'm looking, what is the information that's being delivered here? What was it in Shaka's design of harmonies that attracted me as a kid, where I would play it over and over? I realized I was partaking in a ritual. It was a ceremony, and she was delivering these harmonics, this frequency to feed me.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. All of these artists that you mentioned, they have that for you. It's like Shaka, Aretha, Stevie, any of these people. You're right. You like Donnie. Yeah.
Bring a lot of codes. So now I've translated even drum rhythms, realizing these are codes, a lot of ancient codes, and calculations and measurements matter in that context. You know, that's what a C is supposedly is. It's a certain calculations and measurements that some say is 256 hertz. So I'm like, well, still, you know, like a 3-year-old would ask, well, what's 256 hertz? What is the key of C? You can keep asking, well, what is that? And it's still down to a mystery, but it's got me more interested in that part of the theory of music as opposed to, you know, kind of what we're taught in theory, you know, about music.
Yeah. Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Somebody cuss somebody out. I'm trying to bring attention to the codes you're delivering. And now I become sensitive to that too, whether I go to the grocery store or the bank, what codes are being delivered. That's why I turned off CNN. What codes are being delivered? What do I need and when should I turn it off? And notice how my body feels, my mind feels after being around certain information, certain style of frequency, which I wasn't aware of before. Because usually, you know, I grew up in a household where you fall asleep with the television on. You had no idea all of them commercials creeping into your system while you sleep.
Right.
So
wow. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess.
I'll do part one and do part two.
Yeah, we're gonna have to have you back because we could talk about any and everything with you. It's not just about the music either. But then I also would love to talk about your time in New Orleans and what you recorded there, and I want to talk about how things are in Atlanta and what you're doing there. I want to go into Language Electric more at some point. So, I mean, if it's cool with everybody, we're gonna have you back again another time.
It would be a pleasure. This is my first podcast, so I hope I was on good behavior.
Oh, absolutely.
This was great, and I love your thinking about these music theory and frequencies and the people that you are referencing. You know, for me, it's the I mean, I love everybody you mentioned, but I mean, for me, the Phyllis Hyman. I mean, you know, Phyllis's voice just, do something to me. And when you were talking about the space of this album, I mean, I was living in DC. I can tell you where I was when I got the news report that Phyllis Hyman had passed away. I was driving down M Street in Georgetown, not far from Blues Alley, where she had been a few months before, and I missed the opportunity to go see her. That would have been my last time. And so you're right, tapping into those influences, right, and the ways that they touch you down deep, right, and on the inside, and so that's important. So we gotta unpack that some more, Jhelisa, and I want to hear more, and I've really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I'd like to open more discussion about what's going on with the rituals that we lost and the ceremonies that tribal ceremonies that we lost historically, that were stolen, confiscated, and we parted ways with. That what we have now in the music industry, and how through labels, as opposed to being in your tribe and community, and you have tribal ceremonies that bring forth song, right? That bring forth content and information from the beyond and from the creative world. Now we depend on radio. Well, I grew up depending on radio. If it didn't come on the radio, I didn't know about it. So it's a big power control, a cultural control over what gets heard. Now, what I love about London and the UK, because they had all kinds of stuff coming from all kinds of different places. But growing up in Louisville, you had the radio, and if it didn't come off the radio, if you didn't have an uncle or somebody who had a deep record collection they were sharing with you, then you just had to take from what the radio gave you. And I took those artists. I was very funny about the whole thing. I wouldn't just take anything from the radio. I chose these artists to devour, down in the basement, playing these records. That is ritual for us. That's what we got transferred to. So I definitely would like to open more conversation about our dependence on radio and the power that it holds, especially for young people today, because it's the same situation. They get everything from the radio. Now I know how to seek music from other places, right in my backyard with the crickets and the birds and everything. But they've taken a position over the last 80 years, 100 years, a political position of what we had to take in and what we were exposed to. And that needs to be talked about more, because that's been quite abused. And I think it's being very abused right now.
Yep.
So I look forward to coming back and speaking more about this with you guys. And Bass Heavy, I need some bass on my track, man.
Boy. It's right there. Wait, it's right there.
Forward to working with you again. We need to talk about our time working together. And you said the great name on New Orleans, and like you said, Tondrae, the whole New Orleans experience for me. After London, I chose New Orleans.
And then Bahia, you had time in Brazil.
I was almost living in Brazil, but New Orleans got me first.
Okay, so it's settled. We got to have a part 2 at least, because there's too many. I
was tired to begin with, but you guys gave me some energy, so thank you so much.
Sweet dreams for